It's Youth Sunday. You probably noticed that. If you didn't, wake up or something. I don't know. Could I get a hand for all the students that are involved in the service this morning? They have put a lot of time and effort into making sure that things go well this morning. A lot of them are really stepping out of their comfort zones. Believe it or not, standing in front of all of you on a Sunday morning for about a half an hour can be a little bit intimidating, a little bit. And they've done a great job with it. I'm really impressed, and I'm very thankful. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with these students. I am so impressed with where they are, how seriously they take their faith, how committed they are to just seeing God work in this community. It's exciting to work with these students, and I just want to thank you for that opportunity. There is one student that threatened to pray out my middle name, and that didn't happen. So thank you for that. And if you really want to know who that is, you can just look in your bulletin. So because it's Youth Sunday, I'm supposed to start the service with some kind of youthy story, which is always a little bit of a challenge and kind of weird. So I'm going to start with a story about me in 7th grade. So we're going to talk about 7th grade Ryan this morning. And when I was in 7th grade, me and my family started attending a new church. And one of the things that happened at that church was every year the junior high guys would go on a week-long missions trip, we were talking about missions trips in Sunday school, a week-long hiking trip to South Carolina. And so that kind of had me on edge a little bit. Now, I grew up hunting since I was this big. So I was out in the woods a lot. I would go out on a walk in the woods on a Sunday afternoon. But something to going for a whole week to a place I'd never been, on a trail I'd never seen, seemed pretty intimidating. Because how are you going to know where the water is and where the campsites are and if we can go swimming or not and if there's a place to buy ice cream along the way? Because that's super important. I don't want to go a week without ice cream. So I was really nervous about that. I was really kind of curious as to how you plan out something like that on such a grand scale. And so I was introduced to a book like this. If you're a hiker, you know about these books already. But if you're not, this is a trail guide. And so a trail guide is basically a lot of information put together by a group of people that hike a large trail in sections and record all of the information along the way so that it can be put together in a book so that people like 7th grade Ryan can know how to plan a hiking trip. So it's not that I need to just drive down to South Carolina and figure out where a campsite is. I can find it in this book. So it's this whole group of people that take a lot of their time and invest a lot of their time into putting together a book to pass on to people that they don't even know so that they can be successful in their next hiking trip. It's a group of people that are deeply committed to helping Who's Next. And because those people were willing to help Who's Next, we had a pretty successful hiking trip. It was great. It was fun. We knew where to stop. We knew how far we had to go each day. We knew what to expect along the way. We got ice cream. So that's awesome. Okay? If you hear me talking about hiking trips, and you're like, yeah, I would never purposely be in the woods for more than 20 minutes. That's not something I'm going to do. If that's you, your life has still been deeply impacted by somebody who took care of Who's Next. Because our culture is built on helping Who's Next. If you ever went to school, okay, you had a teacher who had learned something before you, spent a lot of time learning that something really well, came back and made it their job to help you learn that. So you know math because somebody was helping Who's Next. If you do a trade, if you're a mechanic, if you're a contractor, if you're a plumber, somebody spent some time learning that trade, learning that skill, learning the tips and tricks of that, and then trained you to do it because they were committed to helping Who's Next. One of the coolest gifts from God that we have in our culture today, there's two that are incredible gifts that really help Who's Next. They're called Pinterest and YouTube. Okay? Now this is how this works, okay? Ladies, you get on Pinterest, and you see that somebody has spray painted a jar this weird off-color blue and put a ribbon around it and put flowers in it, and it looks incredible, and it's going to make your house look amazing. So then you ask your husbands to paint jars blue and put flowers in them to make it awesome, right? That's because somebody did that, took a picture, and wanted to help who's next. All right? You go about your day, you're doing something, and you're trying to figure it out, and you can't figure out how to do it, whether it's something on the computer or something on a car or something in your house. You can't figure out how to fix a problem. And so you go to YouTube and you search it, and you find out that this dude recorded a video of himself doing exactly what that is, and now you're better off because somebody was committed to helping who's next. Okay? There are a lot of people in our culture that are committed to helping who's next. Now, that's important in our culture. It's even more important in our faith. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at Psalm 145. You can turn there right now. And Psalm 145 teaches us a couple things. But one of the things it teaches us is the importance of helping who's next. Now, this psalm, it has kind of a rich history. In the early church, so like the first couple hundred years of church, Christians would read this psalm at lunchtime every day because they wanted to leave the importance of this psalm with the people that they were with and the people that would come after them. It's written by David. David is a king. The Bible says that David was a man after God's own heart. So that means that David is committed to doing everything he can to live his life in a way that brings honor to God. Now, he doesn't get it right all the time. If you've heard any stories about David, you know that. But he's a good example for us to follow. And so he's the one that's writing Psalm 145. And it goes like this. We're going to read down through verse 8. I will exalt you, my God the King. I will praise your name forever and ever. Every day I will praise you and extol your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. His greatness no one can fathom. One generation will commend your works to another. They will tell of your mighty acts. They will speak of the glorious splendor of your majesty. And I will meditate on your wonderful works. They will tell of the power of your awesome works, and I will proclaim your great deeds. They will celebrate your abundant goodness and joyfully sing of your righteousness. The Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and rich in love. Now, the first part of this psalm is a whole lot of praise and worship from David. And so David is spending time kind of fleshing out what it looks like, his love for God in action. And so he's saying, God, I'm going to praise you forever. I'm going to praise you today. I'm going to praise you tomorrow. Actually, I'm planning on praising you forever because I love you. You are my God. You are my king. Okay? David is a king. And so he understands that when you're the king, everything belongs to you. We don't live under kings anymore, so maybe we lose that a little bit. But with David, he gets it. Everything that he has is because God gave it to him. And so his family, his relationships, his possessions, his kingdom, the things that pop up, the opportunities in front of him, they're all there because God wants him to have it. And he's incredibly thankful for that. Now, David is a normal dude. In youth group, the way that we deal with this is we would say that David is not some stained glass superhero, okay? He's on a church window somewhere. He never dealt with anything real. That's not true. David is a real guy that has to figure out how to live and how God impacts his life on a day-to-day basis. And so I think when David writes something like this, it's not necessarily that he's saying, my life is so awesome, I just want to sing, I just want to sing some more, I just want to sing some more. I think what he's doing is showing us that we usually find what we're looking for. Okay? What he's doing is saying, you know what, God? I am so amazed. I am so thankful. I hold what you've given to me so preciously that I'm going to live a life that reflects the fact that I am super thankful for you. And because I'm living that way, I'm going to see what you're doing. You are what I'm looking for. Now, it's easy for us today to get into a spot where God is not really what we're looking for, right? I mean, like, day-to-day life kind of gets in the way, and we stop looking at what's God doing here, what's God doing in this situation, how is he working out in this? And we kind of put God on this shelf that fits in place with every other thing that we got going on. And all of a sudden Sunday rolls up and we're like, oh yeah, time to think about God again. David's advice for that is, let's keep our eyes trained on God because we're thankful for what he's doing and we don't want to miss it because we usually find what we're looking for. Now, if that doesn't make complete sense, let me put it to you this way. Have you ever bought a car? Now, a new car, a used car, a new-to-you car, okay? And you think, oh, man, I really need this car. This car will solve a lot of my problems. I need to have this. And so you research it, right? You find out how good it is on gas, how many people it'll hold, how well it'll last. And then you go to different dealerships and you test drive it and you get different prices. And finally, you get the car. And you're feeling good because you just got this car. You can't wait to drive it. You're the only one that has it. And on your way home, you start to notice there goes the same exact car. You go to work the next day, and it turns out the guy that works with you, that parks 3 spaces down, he has the same car. By the time you drive home, you realize that most of the people in your town actually have that car. It's not really new or unique. The reason that happens is because you're actually looking for that, and you usually find what you're looking for. And so what that leaves with us, the first step of this helping who's next, is to be looking for what God's actually doing in your life. There's not really anything magical about it. Like if you're looking for what God's doing in your life, it's a lot easier to see it. And that's what David's teaching us. Now imagine if the dudes that put together this book are like, oh man, we got 20 miles to hike today. I'm going to keep watching my toes. This is pretty hard. They would have nothing to add to the book. They'd say, yeah, the dirt's brown. There's a lot of it, several miles of it actually. They missed the waterfall over here. They missed the mountain view over here. They missed the spring right here. They have nothing to contribute. And so the first part of helping who's next is noticing exactly what God's doing around us. Because when we know what God's doing around us, we're better equipped to pass it on. And that's what verses 4 through 8 are about. How are we going to pass this on? So let's pick it up there. One generation will commend your works to another. They will tell of your mighty acts. They will speak of the glorious splendor of your majesty, and I will meditate on your wonderful works. They will tell of the power of your awesome works, and I will proclaim your great deeds. They will celebrate your abundant goodness and joyfully sing of your righteousness. The Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and rich in love. In these verses, David is setting up, when he says generation to generation, the importance of passing it on. And that charge hasn't changed. When David says that, yes, he's thinking about the fact that he's got some kids that he needs to pass that on to, and so he's passing that on to Solomon. But he's also thinking of his dad and his dad's dad and his dad's dad's dad that passed those things down. Those amazing stories of what God had done in their lives that they recognized, they saw, and they passed down. And so it is very much intergenerational. It's David recognizing that there have been people that came before me that are important in my life. There are people that have come after me that are important in my life, and I want to be engaged with both. It's Youth Sunday. I've said that like 1,000,000 times now. And Youth Sundays are cool, but Youth Sundays are a little bit dangerous. Because what can happen is you can see a whole bunch of youth up front, you can see a whole bunch of youth in the back, and you can think, man, this is cool. Like, we really take seriously this intergenerational kind of church. We really have kids involved. And then we forget about it until the next time we have a Youth Sunday. And what David is teaching us is we can't do things that way. We've got to be engaged with other generations than our own so that we can pass on these incredible stories of what God's doing. One of the best examples of this is found in Joshua 4. And you don't have to go there. It's what Angel read at the beginning of the service. And there's this really cool story where, if you're not familiar with the Bible, we'll kind of set this up. God's people were supposed to go to a promised land, and people didn't actually believe that God could do that, and so they had to roam around the woods for like 40 years. Kind of woods, kind of desert. So they had to roam around there for a long time. and they had learned, and I'm sure they passed down, hey, believing God is kind of a big deal, because if you don't, you might end up just cruising around the desert for a while. And so we're at a spot where the people are ready to go into that promised land. Okay, it's those people's kids. And they come up to this river, the Jordan River. It's about 10 to 20 feet wide and about 10 to 20 feet deep. It's not easy to walk across that. And so Joshua says, you know what? We are going to walk across this. God is going to prepare a way. And as they go to step into it, it's dammed up, and the water stops, and the ground is dry, and the people walk across it. And it takes them a bit to get across it. But when they're finally all across the river, Joshua says, guys, I need 12 people to go back over there to get some rocks, to pull them out of the river, stack them right here. We need us a big rock tower right here. Because when our kids see that rock tower, it's going to be a way to say, you know what? God got us through that. Imagine Sunday school. So the guy gets up and he's teaching Sunday school class. He's teaching a bunch of fifth graders. Like, yeah, we got to trust in the Lord our God with everything that we are. And they're starting to get really bored. And he says, hey, guys, you see that rock tower over there? We made that out of rocks that we got out of that river over there. It's an incredible, tangible way to make sure that they're telling a story of what God had done. Because they watched for what God was doing, and now they're passing it on. That's what God's calling us to do. We need to find ways to pass this on. Tangible ways to pass it on. Now, probably not all of us have seen the Susquehanna just stop flowing and went in and grabbed a couple rocks. But we have seen God deliver us in incredible ways in our day-to-day lives. Maybe there's a situation where a job wasn't working out and you were in a tight spot, and so you prayed about it and you shared it with the church and other people prayed about it, and all of a sudden things worked out and you were in a better place. Maybe you were dealing with some kind of really difficult relationship and you prayed about it and God got involved in some way and you could see that he was working out reconciliation in that relationship, and it's in a better place now because that's what God did. Those are the kind of stories that we want to pass on that speaks to God's amazing love and work in our lives. If you're thinking through that and you're like, you know what, I don't really have many great stories, we all share one. And that is that we are fundamentally opposed to God. We in no way can get God to somehow approve of us on our own. And so we at some point came to the recognition of, you know what, I need God's work in my life. I need to trust in Jesus, who is God, that took my punishment, who paid my penalty, and now I can be with God forever. That's an incredible story that we all share and that we can all continue to share with the people that come after us. And that's the call on our lives. That's what we need to do. Now, the reason this is so important is because in the United States, particularly, we're in kind of a tight spot when it comes to next generations. Depending on what statistics you want to look at, between 50 and 80% of students in high school now involved in the church will most likely not be involved in the church very soon. And so this is an incredible challenge to face. And we're not going to just park it there because that's kind of overwhelming and kind of depressing. The statistic that is really exciting is that of the people that are interviewed that decided to stay, so high school students that have said, you know what, Jesus is important in my life, being involved in church is incredibly important, they almost universally share the fact that somebody from outside their generation invested in them in a tangible way and showed them how important it is to be a part of Christ's body in the church. It's almost universal. It's kind of neat working through this because this week was a busy week for me. And one of the things that we did this week is we had a banquet in honor of all the folks that serve here at EBIC in baby through senior high ministry. And so we got everybody together. It was about 200 people that were invited that are involved in some way, like hanging out in the nursery, providing snacks, teaching lessons, doing Sunday school, coming to youth group, anything. We got 200 people invited. A bunch of them came out. We got together. We shared about what's going on in the year. And that's exciting. The thing that's even more exciting about that is when Jason, Julie, and I put together our numbers to say, you know what, how many people are we making a difference in their lives? The number is 499. So in this past year, there are 499 people under the age of about 19 in this community that are much more likely to come to a life-changing faith in Jesus because a lot of you are engaged in helping to make that happen. A lot of you are that statistic of people that say, you know what? I want to invest in somebody's life. I want to see what God's doing. I want to pass it on. I want to be the change. And you're doing a great job. Now, one of the ways that I've seen this work in my life, there's been tons of people that have invested in me and built into me, and I have no doubt that I am where I am today because a lot of people that cared for me when I probably didn't deserve it. I mean, like, I was probably an annoying middle school, high school kid. And one of those people is a guy named Mike. Now, Mike was a super committed youth leader for me. And he always showed up. So he came to youth group, he came to retreats, he came to summer trips. He was there. Mike was a logger. Like, he cut down trees. That's what he did. And so he didn't go to seminary. He wasn't, like, super equipped to, like, open the Bible and just teach a bunch of great lessons. But he came, and he was there, and he showed up, and he invested in us when he was there. And so there wasn't a lot of times that Mike was teaching lessons. What Mike would do is just talk to us about sports, about work, about school, about hunting. That's what we like to talk to Mike about. But when we were talking to Mike, somehow at the end of the conversation, we'd always get to the point where he would say, you know what, guys, what is God doing in your life? And it was a really tangible way for Mike to look at what stories were happening in our lives and then to share with us what God was doing in his life. And so by Mike showing up and just pressing us a little bit outside of his comfort zone, asking us, what is God doing? He was able to have a lasting impact on tons of people. He's had a lasting impact on me, and because of that, he's had a lasting impact on my family, on my son. He didn't know that. But he was committed, and he showed up, and he saw what God was doing, and he passed it on, and he was helping who's next. So, I have two tangible challenges this morning. The first one, that's a little bit harder, is think about what is your next step in helping who's next. I don't necessarily have space for all of you to become youth leaders. That would be a challenge. And I know that not all of you are called to be youth leaders, but all of us need to be investing in some way in folks before us and after us. That's what intergenerational ministry is, and it's really cool when it happens. And so what is your next step? Maybe it's, I am already a youth leader, but I could probably try to step out into those conversations about God's work a little bit more. Maybe it's, I serve Snack, and I want to talk to people a little bit more about what God's doing in their lives. I don't know what it is for you. Maybe it's at work. You want to invest a little bit more in the younger guy that's still learning what's going on. And you want to use that in some way to bring him closer to Jesus. Whatever it is, think about honestly what that is for you. And then take some steps to get there. To really take that step in helping who's next. The next challenge is a little bit more fun, I think. I think it would be good for us to follow the example that Mike set. And put yourself out there and ask somebody, what's God doing in your life? That's easy. It's out of our comfort zone a little bit, I get it. But we could very easily all talk to somebody else outside of maybe our generational box and say, you know what? What's God doing in your life? In a couple minutes, you're all going to get up. You're all going to go out into the lobby. You're all going to be mixed in probably one of the most intergenerational things that we do here. It's the perfect opportunity to just walk up to somebody and say, hey, what's God doing in your life? And it won't be awkward because I just told you to do it. So how many times does that opportunity show up, really? And then take some time to share about those things. Think about what is God doing in your life and share about with the other person about what God's doing in their life. It's really, really awesome. And it's exactly what this passage is telling us to do. In doing those things, we're exactly like those guys that put together this trail book to help people who come after us. to be a meaningful part of the stories of the people that come after us. That's how we be God's church. That's how we make a difference in our communities. Let's pray.